Okay, we will begin this committee of the whole at 6:06. And the first motion comes forward from Deputy Mayor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the agenda be adopted as circulated. Any discussion on the motion? I see no hands, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Next item is declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Does anybody have an interest to declare this evening in regards to the committee of the whole agenda? I see none. So we'll move forward with number 4, which is in camera, and there is no in-camera session, and number 5, and there are no delegations or presentations. So move right into number 6, staff reports, which is 6.1, zoning bylaw amendment application, Kehoe Development, Inc. And the motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor or Deputy Mayor Fody, that the committee of the whole recommends that council approve zoning bylaw amendment application number D14-2023-007 to rezone the property from shoreline residential RS zone, shoreline residential special exception 40 RS-40 zone, tourist commercial CT zone, tourist commercial special exception 9 CT9 zone, tourist commercial special exception CT-23 zone, open space OS zone, and provincially significant wetland PSW zone to rural industrial special exception 18 MR-18 zone. And that the committee of the whole recommends that council grant 3 readings and the recommended bylaw as attached to report planning and development 2024-037 as exhibit G. So the motion is on the floor. Discussion on this motion. Madam Planner, is there any preamble? Nope. Okay. So the report has been before you, council. If you have any questions or concerns, please go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Groh.
I had anticipated that the planning department might want to have a few words, in that they didn't. I'm going to jump right in. When I looked at the report, I read it, and it's quite a good report, I must say. I was very impressed from staff, so thank you. It very clearly outlined the agencies that have dealt with this for going on 3-4 years. And it highlighted, and I've read all the reports and all of the peer reviews of all the consultations. And it seems to me that the federal government, their hand in it from fisheries, we had provincial entities, 3 of them. And I would stand to correct the CRCA stance on this without getting into all the boring details. The CRCA actually refused this permit in 2022. In 2022, Kehoe Corporation took the matter to the CRCA Full Authority Board, which is like going to a tribunal. It's very formalized. At that time, Gord Olkey was sitting in that position from this township. Gord passed away within months after that, and therefore none of us were really apprised of the fact that it had gone before a hearing, and the hearing overturned the CRCA's permit refusal. They did it with some conditions. I only bring that up because it kind of cleans up a few things in my mind, and it took me quite a while to get a hold of that data, being the current board member sitting on the CRCA. It was a dark area there for a while. But I do want to say that the CRCA, the only concern they had under Regulation 14806, currently it would be 4124, is erosion, beach erosion, hazards to property and people, and so on and so on and so on. They really didn't have anything whatsoever to do with rezoning. And I think people misinterpreted that, or perhaps they did, perhaps they didn't. At any rate, the CRCA eventually came to say, okay, given the conditions that we applied, we now support it. So that's just for some clarity. And those conditions are laid out in this great report. It's highlighted under the CRCA. The reports that came from the federal government, the provincial government, they're pretty airtight. It's as simple as that. I read them with a mind to not approve this, but it's hard to dig deep and see where you are going to win. And when I say where are you going to win, because if this council and this township does not approve what is before us, then I can surely tell you it will end up the Ontario Municipal or Land Tribunal. And that is not a place that we really want to end up. So that may be disappointing to hear, but that's my take on it, personally speaking, as someone who sits in this position. So my thinking personally came around to, we're not going to win this thing. We would lose. Personally, I believe we would lose at Ontario Land Tribunal. I have not read anything from the, I hate to say this, from the public, as much as I sympathize with what has been said, and I will come to a couple of points on that. I just can't see where we are going to win that battle. Therefore, I will probably vote in favor of this amendment. But before that, because it's a public meeting, on page 45 of the 48 that the planners have put together, and again, I say I believe it's a very good report. It's very precise in my thinking, having read hundreds of pages of this. On page 45, toward the bottom, a question from the public. If this application is approved, what happens when they approach the township to expand further? When I looked at when I see what has gone on in the past few months, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Kehoe Marine Corp or some numbered company, whatever associated, owns the property on the north side of the parkway. And I believe that they were permitted correctly and within their rights to deposit material there. But that is zoned, when I look at the maps, our own mapping and that of the county, that is mapped as CR2 and RU35. So what would prevent in the future Kehoe Marine from expanding north of the parkway? The answer written here says, a few more words, but it says, of note, the minimum separation distance for Class 2 industrial facilities from off-site residential dwellings and other sensitive use would appear to preclude those opportunities. So in my mind, if, so that's zones rural for residential, ... What is to prevent someone from saying, well, we'd like to move our parking lot over there, or we'd like to have more storage over there for our steel? And that would upset me, and I would assume quite a number of people, more than anything, because this expansion has been going on. And we are being asked tonight to rezone residential properties. You can call it what you want, whether it's shoreline residential or that residential. We are being asked to rezone it. What's to prevent rezoning across the road to expand this into lands? So is it possible that we could put a holding stipulation on those properties that would prevent that, to satisfy forward-thinking public that would concern us? I really don't want to see that expanded across the road. And I don't think that satisfies my angst about it when you say may or possibly or would appear to preclude those opportunities. So that is a big concern of mine. I will also point out that there's a mapping error, I believe, on
Which page?
On F. On, let me get it up here for you. On, I think it is Exhibit F, and it is the mapping, the zone mapping. And if you look at it, it says, it's the red section on that. So I think it's F. Is that coming up properly. Looking at the current Kehoe property, it says CT 22. That is incorrect. It is not C2 22. CT 22 is Ivy Lee Flag Creek. So we have an error there in one of the documents. And I just want to make sure that when we are looking at that bylaw, that it is correct. And does this affect anything? I'm not a genius here, and I'm not a lawyer, but that is in the record, and it's wrong. So I just want to, does that matter? And I don't know the answers to that. So my main concern is how can we and how would we prevent expansion across the road on lands that are privately held, that are CR2, and also in red, this is on the north side of the parkway there, and they're also listed as RU35. Well, RU35, I read, it's just about not being able to build something on the near the road, not the parkway, but the access road into the COA camp. So a CR2 property is pretty broad. And what would prevent, or how could we prevent? I'd be thrilled if we could prevent further expansion. So all I'm saying, I'd like the planning department to give me a little sense of how that would be. Because when I look up on the mapping from the county, that land on the north side of the parkway is split differently than this map shows it, because this isn't really a property map, it's a zoning map. And I'm not 100% sure what land the Kehoe Corporation or numbered company, whatever, owns, but they certainly own something because they were dumping a lot of material on it. So the question would be, how do we prevent expansion across the road? Thank you.
So there's two things that are asking to be addressed. The error in the mapping, which is that a quick answer on the first go round? So whichever one of you would like to speak to that.
No, it is.
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think it was brought up at each of the previous public meetings, noting that there is
An error.
an error on the actual map, but the zoning that corresponds to that section of the property also actually falls under T 23. Those are the correct provisions that permit rural industrial marine facility.
So
on the
this,
property
this has been
currently.
identified previously in other previous meetings that this error exists, but that the CT 23, what's in the motion is correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just, for my own clarity. So then in regards to just keeping in mind that this motion is for the property south of the parkway, but the question is in regards to an adjacent
Excuse
property.
me. On that note, that is correct.
Yeah.
What we are looking at is south of the parkway. But what brings it into play on the north side of the parkway.
I'm
it's
not
the-
disallowing it. I'm
But it's
just,
the minute that they started depositing material over there, that seems to bring it into play in my mind. We can't simply exclude that property and
I was-
suddenly say it's irrelevant to what we're discussing. It is relevant. Thank you, in my humble opinion.
I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I just wanted to be clear that it's in regards to a separate property that is adjacent. So go ahead. Whichever one of you want to speak to what can or cannot happen on those lands.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So as indicated in the response that was referenced in the report, a new application would have to be, submitted. It would have to be addressed, particular to those lands. All the required supporting studies would need to be provided. There would be, just on the surface of it, I think there would be an issue in terms of noise compliance and that separation distance that's specified for an industrial facility from sensitive uses like residential. So I think there would be challenges with proposing an industrial facility expansion on those lands. And those lands currently permit rural uses that are permitted in the rural zone, the parent zone of the township zoning
So it would
bylaw,
have to be rezoned in order for anything else have to work there.
with the full public process and public input.
So,
you.
excuse me if I may just follow up to be clear. And so there'd be no parking lot. There'd be no parking lot allowed over there. There would be no storage of materials allowed over there. Could we be assured of that? Can we would a holding dash H put on that be appropriate, and would it address that concern?
Go ahead, Madam Planner.
Thank you, through you. A holding zone wouldn't have any impact because in a holding zone, a zone allows a use subject to a holding zone. The RU 35 zone allows the uses that are permitted in the rural zone. And then, as you mentioned, dictates the private lane through the campground. So in the rural zone, the permitted uses don't include any of the uses that you had noted in terms of the storage of materials, a contractor's yard, a parking lot. So the principal uses within the rural zone, and I apologize, I'm just trying to get there right now, are an accessory dwelling and agricultural use, a cemetery conservation use, a duplex dwelling, marine facility, which would not be able to go on a rural lot that doesn't have water frontage, on-farm agricultural related use, on-farm diversified use, place of worship. So as it exists right now, the zoning that's on the property would not permit any of those uses that you noted. And that takes care of the situation. And that would put any of those uses, should they occur there, in an enforcement scenario. So to put a holding symbol on this would mean we're opening up the zoning, but it wouldn't have any impact because the uses themselves are already not allowed.
Okay, so just to put a bow on that, the only way that could be changed would be through a full zoning amendment
And a public process.
and a public process with all of the bells and whistles of environmental study. Does that sound reasonable?
That's correct. And there may also be official plan requirements that it may need an official plan amendment to locate an industrial use on that side of the road as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there any questions, other questions from council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. On the vein of the last questions there by Councillor Grell, when I attended the open house for Kehoe Marine that was provided, the president of the Kehoe Marine is here tonight. I was on the understanding that what's being done north of the parkway was a temporary situation. Am I wrong on that understanding on that day? Sure, on that presentation, I was understanding of what was done over there as far as depositing material was a temporary situation and then to be covered over, but I'll let you speak to that if you would, please.
Go ahead, Mr. Cahill. Oh, can you turn the mic on? Sorry.
Yes, to put the material there and level up the site, we submitted a plan through the planning department, a drainage plan to ensure as it is in its final position and graded, everything was still running towards the land towards the parkway. So the development, if we are going to put a house there, would still be up on the higher bluff, the rock area, and that simply will grade it up for a yard at this point in time would be the only plan, and that's what we've submitted to the township at this time.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Madam, Councillor Kelman, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Like Councillor Gorell, I thought this was an excellent report, but I do think it makes several assertions that are open to debate. And the main one is, I think it needs to be clarified once again, as the Director of Planning clarified at the last public meeting, that if this amendment were not to be allowed, there would be no impact on the business as it's operating right now. They could continue to do everything that they're doing now. And I think there's several references in the report that say things like, should the subject application be approved, it will facilitate Kehoe to continue in this business. This application does not have to be approved in order to do that, as I understand from the last public meeting. I also had an issue where it was the application supports the health and vitality of island residents, because there is no mention of how it impacts the other residents that live in the immediate vicinity. And I don't understand how one group of residents would be given precedence over another, particularly when we have had so much feedback from those living in the area, whether seasonally or year round, that is united in opposition to this amendment. So I understand that it may not be within the scope of the planning department to address that, but I think that needs to be taken into consideration by council. I was very disappointed that the department, that staff didn't feel that a traffic study was necessary, a traffic impact study, given the increased amount of heavy truck traffic on the Thousand Islands Parkway. The report lists 5 principles of the roadway as stated by the St. Lawrence Parks Commission on page 36 of the report. None of those really seem to apply to this application, perhaps the last one vaguely. So I do think that there has been a tremendous impact that that parkway wasn't designed for, and that there is the potential in the future for that traffic to increase. So I thought that was unfortunate that that wasn't addressed. I also took issue with repeated reference to the direct water access being critical and intrinsic, in quotes, to the logistics of a marine manufacturing operation. It's certainly ideal, but there are other marine manufacturing operations. There's one in Gananoque. There's a big one north of the 401 in Cornwall that are not on the water. So again, though Kehoe switching locations is not an option today, I felt that it biased the report using terminology like that. I don't know the applicants, but they strike me as very astute business owners. At some point, they made the decision to grow their business to what it has become. And whether that was the plan from the outset or something that became a possibility along the way, I don't know. But I'm sure they did their homework and they knew what restrictions were in place for this piece of property when they purchased it. And at that point, they made a calculated decision that if they wanted any of those restrictions changed, they would be able to make those changes happen. And what I keep asking myself is along the same lines as what Councillor Gorell brought up, is why would they do this? It's obviously been at considerable expense. It's hurt a lot of their neighbors and damaged those relationships. Why would they do this? And my fear is that there is a bigger plan to expand in that location. And I know the report states that it's not possible really for many reasons, but 20 years ago, a lot of people probably wouldn't have thought that this amendment was possible. So I am very, very wary of what is behind this. It doesn't seem to me that just bringing all of their zoning in line is enough of a reason to go through all of this financially and otherwise. And I feel like they've really lucked out benefiting from a political climate that's very weak on natural heritage protections right now. I read the report over and over again this weekend, and I've read all of the comments that have been submitted by the public. Both state many things from the various official plans that are at play here. So what this means to me is that these official plans can be nuanced to really support or oppose this application. And that's something that we as a council should be aware of going forward for other issues as well. So for me, it goes back to what I first thought when I first went down to visit this site in September, when I became aware of this issue and before we had the first public meeting. And I looked at the site and I just thought, it's too big. It's too big for the parkway. It's too big for that location. It's too big for McCrae's Bay. And there's nothing we can do about it now. We aren't being given an option to reverse anything that's been done. But when I look at the homes in that area and I read all of the comments, more comments than I've got on every other issue in the last year put together, all united in opposition to this amendment, I just feel like I have to put the lives and the homes of people in this area and the natural heritage of this township first. And I think this will be a bellwether decision for this council. And I am not afraid of the Ontario Land Tribunal, and I am going to vote against this amendment.
can I ask people to, can I ask you to please hold your applause?
Can I please ask you to hold your applause so that we can continue with the meeting? Thank you. Any other motion or any other counselors have discussion points on this motion? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fode.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through, excuse me. Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I won't reiterate what both Councillor Gorell and Kelman have had to say on points that would be duplicated if I was to do so. I will say back when we had the planning meeting, the last planning meeting, I reached out to the Director of Planning to ask what could be done for future restrictions based on, as Councillor Gorell has indicated, we're somewhat handcuffed here on what we can or can't do. We can still vote this down. Looking at the larger picture, my fear is similar to some of the residents here tonight, excuse me, in that I've been around long enough to know that what if Kehoe's, being the principal owners, Ken and Sarah, don't own this anymore? Should they sell it for whatever reason? I would like to put stipulations on anything that should be passed here tonight, should it be passed, that what is taking place on that site be restricted to that ownership and management. And should it ever change hands, then everything's off the table to be brought back and dealt with differently. Restrictions can be put on this. I'm going to skip over to the open house again at Kehoe's. The application was told to me that day that this was merely a zoning issue to allow a coverall to be put up. And that was it from the outset. They couldn't put the coverall up. The application got denied by the planning department because of the zoning. The coverall, if I'm not mistaken, unless plans have changed, was to take the unsightly steel, which has been mentioned in numerous times since last summer, to put into storage inside the coverall. That would address a number of complaints from residents in the area. I don't have a problem with the unsightly steel because, as anyone knows, you don't paint steel to put it in Aqualife. It can't be painted. Could be. I suspect there's a number of authorities would weigh in heavy on that. Marnie Ross sent an email to us today. Excuse me. And it touched on something that I would like to have seen, but I'm not going to go so far as to tell a business how to run their business. And Marnie's email touched on the idea of Kehoe's putting growth into an industrial site, such as we now have approved south of the tracks here at Lansdowne on the west side of County Road 3. I too would like to see that. I don't think in the stellar management and the growth and the future, I don't think Kehoe's are done growing either. I agree with Councillor Kelman. However, they're getting like a bird nest this time of year. They're crowding out of their own nest. So I would like to see them grow elsewhere. And maybe when that day comes, the majority of the industrial could go with that. But at the same point, I couldn't help but smile when I got this Tierra letter, not very long after our last planning meeting. And in essence, it told the story of how Tierra was formed by the late Douglas McIntosh. I had a good relationship with Douglas McIntosh. He was kind enough to tell me that he would vote for me in the last 2 municipal elections, as well as support me, which meant a lot to me from a previous sitting council member. The story, in a different format, tells that Tierra was formed by landowners who did not want to be told by somebody else what to do with their land. That's the essence of the story. Anybody sitting at this table knows I've been a long time supporter of landowners' rights, thus not being told by somebody else what to do with your property. I've often told people, if you feel that strongly, you should buy the property. I used to own a lot of land with my wife, with my parents, enjoying partnership for a number of years. And we know the responsibilities and understand the rights and responsibilities that go with owning land. I'm going to vote in favor of this tonight for the simple reason of the sheer strength and all the pluses that go along with the management of Kehoe Marine, the jobs they supply. I know a number of people have gone there at whatever level of employment. They've been encouraged, they've been sent away for training, they've been sent away for certification. And every step of those moves those same people up the pay scale. I'm not so sure those very same people could work that close to home and be where they are today. I'm sure you could ask them that. There's a lot of things at play in this. I understand that. I'm not buying into the aspect that Kehoe Marine is environmentally irresponsible. There's just too many examples of their environmental responsibility. And it goes without saying, the mere contracts that they pull off every year, both in provincial and federal contracts, would not even be offered to them if any of those higher levels of government thought they were irresponsible. So rather than keep talking here tonight, if we want to do anything, and I would propose we do, I would like to put a restriction that if this passes tonight, this is only the ownership of the current land or the current property owners or business owners. Because if we change the zoning, as Councillor Grell had indicated earlier, and Councillor Kalman had stated as well, 20 years from now could be a different ownership with a totally different intent. And I'd like to handcuff that. Thank you.
Madam Planner, you have a response to that question?
Thank you through you. Zoning cannot be limited to an individual owner. Zoning travels with the land and the land use is established through the zoning. The recommended bylaw as presented specifically defines a marine manufacturing facility and only permits the other accessory uses as accessory to a marine manufacturing facility. Sorry, I couldn't speak there. So it limits the scope of the land use. It establishes the setbacks and the requirements for the property. Zoning cannot be tied to an owner and cannot be taken away if the owner changes.
Follow up?
Thank you. So could I ask to jog your memory on the clarification last fall when I asked if we could put restrictions on this? And that was based, what couldn't we put restrictions on and how is it categorized?
Through you, your worship. So the restrictions are with respect to the uses. So the original application came in proposing a number of uses. Through review of the application, those uses have been scoped down and narrowed. So for example, the original application proposed an automobile service station. It proposed a contractor's yard. The recommended bylaw defines what the marine manufacturing facility is as an establishment with a boat ramp and docking facilities engaged in the assembly, production, processing, and finishing or refinishing of docking facilities, boathouses, tugs, barges, boats, and other marine structures and facilities, and then only allows those uses as accessory and subordinate to that marine manufacturing use. So if the property were to be sold, it could not be used as a gas station. It could not be used as a warehouse. It could not be used as a transportation terminal on their own. It could, those uses are only permitted if there is a marine manufacturing facility and they're subordinate to that use. So those are the nature of the uses. The other provisions proposed establish side yards, establish requirements and maximum limits on the storage of materials, establishes buffering requirements for parking. So those are the types of restrictions that we can put in through zoning in terms of where things can be located, how high they can be, what their setbacks are required to be, but we can't place any restrictions on ownership.
More follow up?
One more follow-up, if I may. Should we pass this tonight and we still wish to put restrictions on, what's our time scope to be able to do that?
Through your worship, the zoning is as recommended and in front of council. So if there's restrictions, and I don't know what they would be proposed, so I can't comment on those, but they would have to be included in the zoning bylaw as approved by council. Once a decision is made, it can't be reopened.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other counselor who hasn't spoken like to make a comment? I'll recognize Counselor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. This has been at our table for many, many times. Whatever decision we make is not going to change the use of this property at this moment anyways. It does clean it up, and be able to put a coverall. And I guess my one question there, if it doesn't pass, is the coverall still able to go up or is it not able to go up? Not able to go up. Okay. So as I'm always proactive and want things to go ahead, and I'm more proactive for commercial enterprise. But I also sit at this table because I was voted here. So I will be siding with the people who voted me here.
Any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been pretty quiet about the whole situation. I'm looking at this from a couple of different perspectives. One is industry in the water. I've been on the water. I've made a living on the water a lot of years. It was one of the first sources of commerce, I think, in this country, if I'm not mistaken. And I think if you look at it today, I've had an opportunity to be both east and west along the river, along the St. Lawrence. And, you know, I'm looking at the elevator in Johnstown. I'm looking at the ethanol plant. I'm looking at concrete plant in Bath, the plants in Prince Edward County. Pretty well, most of the major plants are focused on the water, and they're focused on the water for a reason, and that's transportation. A lot of goods, if you were to run them down the road, I will take the elevator as an example, corn, soybean. If you're using the 401 and trucks, how much are you saving the environment by sending thousands and thousands and thousands of trucks down the highway when you can do it with one boat? And I guess it's the same here. Could the equipment be built modular? Sure, it could, at a price. You know, there's the affordability factor. Again, you're going to cut it down into pieces to put more vehicles on the road when one tugboat can literally tow a whole marina into place 400 miles down Lake Ontario or 300 miles down Lake Ontario. So if you want to talk environment, I think what they're doing is more environmentally friendly than having things run up and down our roads, tearing them up by the sheer weight and size. I dare you to build one of the boat ports or boathouses and try and ship that to the water. I challenge anyone. You're going to be calling Hydro One to move wires. You're going to be closing down highways for the sheer width. There's a lot of it, but I think the point I wanted to make is industry has always been focused around the water, and it will be probably for most of our lives. So I don't think it's an issue there. And I'd like to go to the fact that having been so close to what's been going on, there was issues of noise, there's issues of light, there's issues of a lot of things. Well, it doesn't get any closer than me. So everything that's been done down there has been done for a reason. I've seen them put the shields on the lights. As far as the noise goes, you know what? The employees are very professional. They come into the employee parking lot at the same time every day. They're gone the same time every day. And more often than not, if there is manufacturing going on, it's going on inside the facility. I don't hear it. You know what I hear in the morning? Once in a blue moon, I'll hear, I've got them. Thank you
I
very
ask you
much.
to keep your comments until the councillor
I
has
hear the
finished speaking.
tugboat
Thank
going
you.
out in the morning with a barge. The guys are gone. I see the guys going in the little boats out to the job sites. There isn't a lot of noise. Now, that's debatable. And everybody can say, well, that's loud. I may say it's not loud. Again, I do have hearing aids, so I hear quite well now. So I'm in favor, just for the simple fact that if we look at the area, people said about the parkway. Well, as far as I know, the parkway was originally built to be the 401, and it was built to the standard of the 401, which can take a heck of a pounding. That's number one. Number two, there used to be an MTO weigh scale right across the road. There's Tyco ran the same operation 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, out of that exact location. You've got a marina next door to that. You've got two marinas and a boat line down in Ivy Lee, which are within throwing a baseball distance. You've got the Ivy Club. I mean, it's It's commercial. You're going to have commercial entities on the water. I get most of them are tourism, but this is a marine manufacturing facility. That is where it belongs.
Are there any other counselors that'd like to make comments? Seeing none, I can call the question at this point. Oh, sorry, I apologize. There's 3 people who have their hand up, so okay, I have 4 people that have I had asked that you keep your comments brief and not repeat anything that's already been mentioned this evening. So I'll recognize the lady in the front row. Please come forward. Yeah, state your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Macklem. I live at 414 Old River Road. So I'd like to thank the counselors for their interesting and thoughtful contributions tonight. I just actually, I've written letters. I think many people are aware of my position about this. I do wonder, I come from the Thousand Islands Alliance of River Advocates, which is what Tiara is now called. And one of our board members is Haudenosaunee, and we have built a strong alliance with Indigenous people in Cornwall and Akwesasne. And I'm just wondering what kind of consultation was happening during this whole process with Indigenous people, if they have had any participation in this debate. And I just want to point out that Angela Kilman mentioned that she's not afraid of the Ontario Land Tribunal. And I think that's kind of a great position to adopt. I mean, what is there really to be afraid of? It's just another step in the process. And yeah, there's so many issues tonight that I don't want to get into too much, take up too much time. But the argument that all industry that relates to the river happens on the river is kind of extraordinary, because we all know that there are many industrial sites that are away from rivers, in order to protect them, in Brockville and Gananoque and Kingston. This is a growing community, and it's kind of time that I think you became aware of the fact that it is growing, and it would be great to have a little industrial location, a little industrial site that's away from a World Heritage UNESCO recognized natural environment, which is the riverfront. Thank you.
Okay. The lady in the pink in the second row, please come forward.
My name is Colette Kenny, and I live at 612 Lyndhurst Road, Lyndhurst. And as I've stated in previous public meetings, I'm doing my best to be a voice for people or things that are voiceless. So I feel I'm here today for the plants, the animals, the aqua life, the water itself. I'm really here to express my disappointment and concern about one issue in this application. That is the removal of the designation of provincially significant wetland from one piece of this parcel. Now, why is that significant? The reason it's significant is that if that zoning had not been removed, in your own zoning bylaw, it says no person shall hereafter use any lands nor erect, alter, or enlarge or use any building or structure in a provincially significant wetland zone. If we look at the provincial policy statement itself, it states development and site alteration shall not be permitted in significant wetlands in ecoregions 5E, 6E, and 7E1. We happen to be in 6E and 7E. So some of the background on this is that there were changes in the legislation. This had to do with how these significant wetlands are assessed. Historically, Doug Ford changed the legislation in 2022. This significantly reduced the power of the evaluation. And I'm reading here from Doug Heavener, the CAO of the Nottawaga Valley Conservation Authority. He has said the changes which are now in force will no longer allow wetlands to be grouped together, treating each wetland as its own entity. Smaller wetlands will most likely not meet the criteria to be provincially significant and may be open for development. In fact, that is the case with this small parcel. So I'm expressing my concern about that. And I'm recommending that in the public record, the reevaluation that was conducted by Karen Fraser and peer-reviewed by Sean Thompson be included in the public record. And it's quite saddening to me that the criteria is so low that this wetland was unable to be passed, and that if that wetland had been maintained, this entire development would be a non-issue because it would de facto be illegal. So here, on behalf of the plants, the turtles, the fish, I'm asking if we can somehow do better. And I have heard expressions of interest on behalf of the councillors in terms of maybe can we not win this, Councillor Gorel? Well, I'm concerned this has already happened. I'm here because I care about the wildlife and nature. I respect the fact that Kehoes are in fact the largest employer in this township, is what I read today. What's happening right now is the bar is very low. Due to an interest in developing this parcel, it was technically possible to take off a protection label off a piece of water and land that was protected. And I'm asking all councillors to consider how can we prevent this from happening in the future. And I'm also asking the Kehoes, because there's literally nothing I can do to protect this land. But you have the money and the power. You have a business that's helping this township thrive. And we are all connected. If you look at the maps that have been handed out, we are literally drawing lines in water. And this is supported by a CRCA that has a policy that allows dredging in provincially significant wetlands. Now, I can't think of anything that would cause more sediment than dredging. So can we win? Well, I don't think technically this is about winning. The Indigenous people would make a decision like this that is being made tonight, and they would consider how this would affect 7 generations from today. And I think what we have today is I am the 7th generation of my family that came from Ireland. I think we know where this is going. So we are all connected, and I'm literally begging you to consider all of us that are here today. And I'm sure we can find a way to allow this business to thrive, but not to impact the wetlands. So can the township find a way to not rezone these wetlands? I'm asking you to look into that. And can we all work together to try and find a way to be respectful of all of the plants and animals that don't have a voice here today, and the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren, and your grandchildren, so there'll be something left that's still alive. So I thank everyone for listening tonight. I'm grateful that this process allows me to speak. Thank you.
Sorry, I can't see your face behind the podium. If you'd like to step forward.
Thank you. My name is Jacqueline Reed, and the address is 533C, Thousand Island Parkway. And I'm actually the 7th generation of my family to live on that land. And it is so, I mean, it's a very exhaustive report, and really commend all of the work and I know has gone into this process. And I just wanted to briefly add the stuff that's not in the reports, the stuff that's not just in the legislation, because this is about the community. That's why people are showing up. And I think it's incumbent upon this body to take that into consideration alongside all of the other pieces, because I want to have 7 more generations after me. But I am the 7th generation on that land, and I've seen it change. I've seen it change from when I used to go, my first bullfrog I saw on that wetland when I was like 5 years old. And now there's so much debris there. We don't want the kids playing there. And so I'm sorry to get emotional, but this is so important for us as a community. And I think we have an opportunity. And to the point, yeah, you might not win at the land tribunal, but it matters what the vote is today. It matters. So even if you don't win the next step, it doesn't mean you give up now. And I think it's really important. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Mr. Bell?
Your Worship, members of council, I'm here representing Tierra, the Thousand Islands advocates, Thousand Islands Alliance for River Advocacy. This has become a very contentious issue, and it needn't be a very contentious issue. I think we should look at things in the broad perspective. First, I should compliment Kehoe's. They clearly have made a major contribution to this entire area in terms of its economic success, in terms of its reputation. They are well regarded by the clients they have served and will serve in the future. And I think everyone is supportive of them trying to expand as is needed and as works with the economy. That being said, their expansion actually fits well into the philosophy of TLTI. We are on the verge of having a new subdivision with increased housing, more people living in the area, the services that will require, and of course, job creation. So this is all a forward-moving picture. And really, what we need is proper, long-term, organized planning. Taking short-term gains with negative features to them is not in anyone's interest. And when I say short-term gains, I'm talking about trying to expand a business in an unsuitable site where there are major consequences to the well-being of the neighbors, in terms of light and noise pollution and traffic pollution, let alone runoff into the river, despite all efforts made with modern engineering techniques to prevent that, this is likely to occur. If we set up a committee of inquiry to try and get support from federal and provincial governments for setting up an organized industrial park, I'm sure there would be help available, which would be available for all people, Kehoe in particular, but also to other businesses that would be interested in moving to this area. Now, we are in a unique area in terms of transportation. Yes, we have river. Yes, we have the 401. We also have rail lines. With modular construction techniques, things can be readily delivered, manufactured, and shipped out. So looking at things in the long term, making a plan that will work for all these concerns is in everyone's interest. It would certainly benefit Kehoe, and I emphasize, I think TLTI does owe a debt to Kehoe and should be supportive of trying to help them expand according to their plan. But right now, they're in the wrong place. Having an industrial facility in a fragile environment like this is really not in anyone's interest. And so let's not get into the weeds of all the complexities of trying to achieve one end and compromising another. That's not good long-term planning. And I think that's what we should all consider. With a good long-term plan, 10, 20 years, whatever, it's going to benefit not only us, but the future. So I think we should compliment Kehoe on what they've done to date. And I think we should encourage them to develop as they are capable of doing. And I don't think we should be fighting about minor details, which are only going to obscure the issue and cause hardship, especially for the neighborhood and the environment, and indeed the key element in this economy, which is tourism. And I guess I should say ecotourism, because that's really the main selling point of the Thousand Islands. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another hand up. Please come forward. Yeah, please come forward.
Hi, everyone.
Can you put the microphone? Sorry.
I'm taller, right? Ooh. My name is Roswitha Lippman Baker. My husband and I live at 528 Thousand Islands Parkway, directly across from McRae's Bay and Kehoe. Kehoe is to our west. I'd like you to imagine living on the Thousand Islands Parkway and being able to enjoy the views, the sounds of nature, and the sheer beauty of this unique area. This was our dream after building our forever home. Now our dream has been terribly distorted. Somehow, somewhere things have changed. Over the past 8 years, our environment became chaotic. Not just for us, but for our neighbors on Weston Island and our neighbors to the west of us. Kehoe Marine Construction got busier, noisier, and installed lighting that would impact all of us. The wetlands are being threatened and ignored. How can land zoned wetland all of a sudden not be wetlands and be allowed to be rezoned industrial? To have lands rezoned industrial in an otherwise residential commercial area creates an unattractive and undesirable environment for us all. This is not a not in my backyard issue. It's an issue addressing logic, transparency, finance, and environment. Kehoe's projects have impacted the environment, the wildlife, and our quiet enjoyment of living here. Kehoe has scarred the land with its parking lots, with their unsightly buildings. Nothing has been done to protect us from the sight and sounds of daily manufacturing. I don't understand why someone that lives next door to them doesn't feel the shock of metal dropping. We live across the street. When the metal drops from the huge metal that's in the front yard, we can't hear each other talk. And we're across from McRae's Bay. I'm certain that you, Mayor, and you, the councilors, have seen our written objections and heard our side of the story. But did you really listen to us? Councillor Angela Kalman did, and we thank you. We thank you for coming down to our area to see us, to listen to us, and to be supportive. Thank you from all of us. So what's the right thing to do? We would like the mayor and the councilors to very carefully think about this vote. Put yourself in our shoes. In closing, remember the official plan, the environment, the residents directly impacted by your decision. This is not about bullying, name calling, or intimidation, which we've been through, by the way. It's about cohabiting with our neighbors and the environment. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So we do have a council meeting as well tonight, so I need people to keep their comments brief. We have a council meeting after this. I will recognize I'll recognize the 3 hands. So the gentleman in blue, Margot, and the person at the back, and then I'm going to give an opportunity. And we have 2 people online that I have to recognize as well. And then I'm going to give the applicant an opportunity as well. Please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is John Clement. I'm a cottager on Weston Island, 533 the Parkway. And my family has been part of that island for almost 150 years. I have watched the Kehoe progression over several years, discussed the unlimited, unrestricted, and free use of McCrae Bay with 3 separate M&R representatives. Their response was typical: government, uncommittal, and no conclusive answers to why the special treatment. The whole eastern half of the bay was used to barge, with barges tied to island trees with heavy ropes, some still there. Their large diggers sometimes dropped into the river bottom to drag barges into position. 2 pieces of dockage have remained stuck on our shore for years. We cannot remove them, nor the old tires sunk in the mud. The company has grown exponentially and unobstructed over the years through deceit, lack of due diligence by consecutive township councils, government ministries, agencies, and while conflict of interest rules have not always been observed. It is time this farce is stopped and the law of the official plan and the provincial policy statements be observed and respected as each was intended. The Kehoe progression is industrial creep or functional stupidity, considering the damage caused to the environment, neighboring property values, noise and light pollution, the blight on an otherwise scenic view, the damage created behind 3 residences, plus concerns to physical and mental health. All this is unimaginable to all councillors without seeing the physical damage themselves. I want to mention too that I feel that Councillor Lackey and your worship have severe conflicts of interest and should actually not be part of this meeting this evening. And I totally respect what the ombudsman said, but I disagree totally, personally and legally. Councillor Angela Kelman and Mark Jameson have both visited the site. Councillor Kelman sent her observations and photos to Councillors Maybe, Gorell, Deputy Mayor Fody, who have not visited the site. These councillors have been elected to represent their constituents, but are neglectful in their duty and responsibility. Each councillor represents a ward, but each votes on all matters which come before council, and therefore should have visited the site and discussed the concerns of residents. I must thank Councillor Kelman, who wrote a very detailed and well-written report of her observations while visiting the site, along with photos, and sent both to fellow councillors for their obvious need to know. Her report contained 5 points of deep concern, which I will not go into detail here, but it is her last sentence which sums up the whole issue, and I quote, "I don't like what I see there. If all is in order, then it's just a shame that we can't do more as a municipality to protect our residents and their properties." End quote. So here we are with all that Kehoe has done, unobstructed. He now wants to rezone the property to something the OP and the PPS reject to their official documents. Does anyone care a precedent is being set here for the whole township to invite industry south of the Parkway? Will this precedent affect neighboring townships? Their councils also put under pressure for similar demands of convenience. Will Pex Marina be the next business to fall? Maybe set up the stamping company Kehoe mentioned he purchased during the meeting, which many neighbors and interested parties attended at his office last February. Check noise bylaw 22-049. As taxpayers, property owners expect their properties to be protected from unsolicited, environmentally and destructive actions through our elected governing representatives to follow and respect legal written official plans and provincial policy statements. The just released staff report came out so late I was unable to read prior to this meeting, but it must be noted, Council is under no obligation to abide by any recommendations in the report and may vote against it. Had this whole plan being conducted in a more constructive way from the beginning, the outcome could have been totally different, but favorable to all parties. In conclusion, money speaks. But in this case, so does nepotism, bias, partisanship, prejudice, you name it. It's all there. Thank you.
So can I'm taking comments from this isn't a debate. This is taking comments from the public, or no response at this point. So I will recognize Margot. I think you had your hand up, and then the other lady, and then we need to take the items on the online, please. Thank you.
So, good evening, councillors and mayor, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. It's going to be quick. Am I understanding that 4 of the councillors have not even visited this site in the last, say,
I
6
believe
months?
all councillors,
Everyone has?
I'm not sure about Councillor Gorell. I know that the rest of us went to the open house, one of the open houses.
Councillor? Yeah. And Councillor Lackey, do you still live on that property? That's sort of just something I wanted to alert people to. I think it's, as was talked earlier, that is a bit of nepotism. However, pardon? I guess my other concern is, has Kehoe updated their aerial photo that must be 4 or 5 years old? Because it is really misrepresenting anyone from the public who is trying to get information on this and looks at this old photo. It's not at all up to date. That's number one. The other mistake that Councillor Gorell has pointed out, it feels like at every meeting, is the mistake in the what is it, CT 22? It keeps showing up here is incorrect. I mean, this is important to get these things updated. And I guess sitting here, I get very discouraged in thinking all the work that went into official planning by maybe some of you. I know some of you were probably still on council, and maybe it was before you became councillors and you participated in the official plans and making all these bylaws that were to help protect this beautiful river. And I feel like, what's the point? Over and over, we see all of these things broken for the advantage usually of business and not for the residents or the people that own property. And again, my real concern is the poor people that own property around that their values go down. As taxpayers, you know how important that is to the council and to our township. And what a better, worse way to let them down to have these kinds of things go on. Anyhow, it's pretty discouraging. Thank you.
And there was one more hand. If you'd like to come forward, please, on the end.
Hello, thank you, Council Mayor Smetgatke, for the opportunity to speak. I won't take up much of your time. I'm sure all of us have other things to do besides being here on this beautiful evening. My comments, many issues have been brought up. There's 2 things I'd like to address. One is about the increased traffic that we will see with the growth of Kehoe Marine at that site. That means that there'll be more trucks bringing more materials to that site every day. I'd be interested to know if the planners or if anyone is aware of what will be the volume of the trucking of construction materials to that site. How will it change? How much more trucks will be along the parkway bringing this material to the site? What's the materials that are being brought there? What's the frequency of those vehicles coming along the parkway? And is that how we want to use the parkway?
it's a question. The other thing that I just want to mention is I've heard from at least a couple of counselors that you would like to see some restrictions added to the approval of the application if it is approved. But I've heard from the planners that restricting any kind of growth on the other side of the parkway would require a whole new application. Well, I don't see what would stop Kehoe Marine from making a new application. If they're successful, particularly with this one on the waterfront, if they're successful with the one on the waterfront, why would they not go to the trouble of trying to get a new application approved on the north side of the parkway? The other point that I heard brought up was, could we restrict if a different owner took over this property? And the answer was no. We can't restrict. Any kind of amendment is, any rezoning sticks with the property. So if you have concerns about what's going to happen in the future with this property, then I urge you to vote against the application. That's the only way that this council will have an impact on the continued growth of the Kehoe Marine business at that particular site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I have two hands up online. I have Chase Moyle. So if we're going to unmute you and you'll be able to make your comments, please.
I appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the time right now. I'm at 533. I'm pretty neutral on the issue, actually, but my background is fully in business. I spent a number of years consulting, attended Harvard Business School, and have been following this issue for the last 12 months here. We've talked a lot about what should happen right now, and I think Terry proposed something in terms of zoning. I think that there's a pretty clear next step, and what we haven't talked about is taxation here with Kehoe. We haven't talked about how the company will be taxed moving forward and how these tax dollars should be put to work moving forward. There's a lot of residents in the area that are pretty unhappy and how we could put these tax dollars to work to improve the area that's going to be impacted. And I think that this committee should do a lot to actually improve the area that's, that Kehoe is actually doing work on in a negative way. The reason that I think that this isn't happening is pretty clear. And Madam Mayor, I'm looking right at you, and I think that that's because of negligence, bias, and these are things that were recognized probably 8 to 12 months ago. But I think it's something that's going to come back to bite this entire city in the butt. I think that there are a lot more eyes on this than you think. I think that from a press standpoint, there is crossover with Kehoe and representation right now. I do not think that you or Jeff should be in this meeting. I do not think that you should be voting on it at all. I think that you are guiding this meeting in a very, very poor way. And I think that once you have very clear journalists and reporters on this, it will have poor career impact for you. Now, you can step back and make your own decisions about it. Fine with me. Do as you will. Again, doesn't impact me at all. But I think 4 leads for the 1,000 Islands, it's going to be negative. Kehoe is not the reason why the 1,000 Islands are successful. It's tourism. Kehoe employs a couple hundred people. Great. Zoning, it's not going to be the big thing. Like, the worry right now is that a story gets out about how this passed. That is the worry. And I think that everyone on the committee should take a good hard look in the mirror right now and say, is this the right thing to do right now? So that's what I've got to say. Like, do what you will, but appreciate the time.
Thank you. We have the next speaker, which is Joe Dandelay.
Yes, thank you. Joel Dandelay. I live on Hill Island. Our family has been in the area since the 60s. So we've traveled the Parkway quite a bit. And we've been in love with the area. And what I'm going to say is going to be very factual. I'm not going to get into anything too personal. In best practice and fairness, this application should be allowed to default to the tribunal. As per the Planning Act, any application that's brought before council needs to be reviewed, passed, or rejected within 90 days. We're at the stage now where the staff report was only submitted 100 days from when the application was made. Tonight, we're at 105 days, well past the cutoff. This application should not receive any special consideration for an extension. And that will, if it is, it'll tie directly into what the previous speaker was talking about. The heavy public opinion in opposition of this application speaks to the gross negative impact it will have on the surrounding area and the direct adjacent property owners. Uncertain expansion in the future, not only on the property to the west, because if we look at things in a realistic form, the next property to be acquired by Kehoe is the adjacent marina, of which again, we all know that will come in for rezoning and further expansion. Let's not fool ourselves. There's a real need for an impartial overview of all the documents. This is required to protect the property owners who will and already are negatively impacted by the operations on the property and the future planned operations. We have seen the past amendments to zoning and to the official plan passed by council and fostered by the planning department have shown a total disregard for the area. The OP needs to be protected, as does the environment. And the tribunal is the avenue to go to for this. A proper review of the impact on tourism along the Parkway and Gananoque and neighboring areas is required. An impact study for traffic is required, and I do not side or agree with the planning department's dismissal of such a report. Going to the tribunal will remove all real and perceived conflicts. And that is something that is a true factor and requirement in this application. In closing, I feel that Councillor Kelman has hit many of the key issues on the head, which other councillors have sidestepped. And she has directed shortfalls in the staff report. A business is being put ahead of individual property owners, and that is irreprehensible. You are all voted onto council to protect the public and individual property owners, not one business operation. As a business grows and expands, it needs to take into account its existing circumstances and restrictions on its property, not plan on favoritism from friends and councillors to help them rewrite and redesign the neighborhoods. So this should, again, as I said, by default, fall over to the tribunal. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kehoe, did you want to make any Oh, we have one more. Sorry. Sorry, another comment online from Kathy Wills, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Kehoe.
Thank you.
There we go.
Kathy Wills. Maybe too abstract, but
Ms. Wills, we're having a hard time hearing you. Ms. Wills, you're cutting in and out. We're struggling.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you right now. If you'd like to continue to speak, and I'll let you know if we can't.
Okay. I wanted to just quote William Blake from The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and who said that we never know what is enough until confronted with what is too much. And I think in this age of increasing climate chaos, we all have to do a little soul searching and say what is enough. Kehoe is a fantastically prosperous, successful business. Is that not enough? We live in the UNESCO Heritage Site in the fabulous Frontenac Arch Biosphere. Is that not enough? Can we not accept that the future is sustainable, metered growth, and ecotourism? So let's vote for what we have and what is enough. And let's vote for a reasonable outcome for all of us and for all the generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I have no more hands up online, so I'll go to Mr. Kehoe or the planner, whoever wants to speak in regards to this.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kelsey Jones. I am the registered professional planner here on behalf of Kehoe. I'm not going to try and speak to everything that's been said this evening by the public, but I would just like to clarify a few things and maybe just bring a few things to front of mind. First of all, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry updated their provincially significant wetland mapping. So although there is part of this application seeking to rezone PSW lands, the MNRF does not classify those as PSW lands. There's been a lot of questions and concerns about potential expansion of this operation. The Kehoes are not looking to expand their existing manufacturing. They have previously completed building addition to the existing manufacturing building. That's not proposed to change. What is proposed through this application is to consolidate the zoning of these lands and allow one new indoor storage building to be added south of the existing storage building. So there's no change to the existing manufacturing operation proposed. Kehoe is, operating as they are. And should council not approve this application this evening, Kehoe Marine will continue to operate as they are because on the west portion of their property, a marine manufacturing facility is permitted. So regardless of council's decision on this application, the marine manufacturing facility will continue because it is already a zoning compliant permitted use on those lands. Regarding the traffic, again, there's no change in the existing operation. So the existing traffic, customers, employees, trucks, there's no change that will occur should this application be approved. The existing traffic generated to and from the site will remain unchanged. Supporting studies were completed to assess the proposed zoning application and the addition of the storage building. So an environmental impact assessment was completed by an ecologist, peer reviewed by a third party, impartial party, and the findings of those were posted by staff together with the report. Similarly, there was a noise impact study that was completed by an acoustical engineer that was also peer reviewed by a third-party impartial company. And as well, there was a stormwater management report that was prepared, that was assessed by staff as well as the Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority. So there has been a number of supporting studies that have been completed that are in support of the current rezoning, given what's being proposed. And just to clarify, the 90 days that the last speaker spoke about, that doesn't automatically mean that should council not provide a decision on an application within that 90 days, that it automatically triggers an OLT decision. What happens is it gives an applicant the ability to appeal council's non-decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Kehoe's have decided in this case, although they are past the 90 days, that they want this decision by council. So it is fully within their rights right now to appeal council's non-decision on this, but they have chosen to wait. So again, it's not an automatic trigger that the OLT is to make the decision. It gives an applicant the option to appeal council's non-decision. So hope that clarifies just a few things. But again, the existing marine manufacturing is permitted on the property on that west portion, and it will continue regardless of council's decision. Thank you.
Okay. So with all of the comments from council and the comments from the gallery, as well as the individuals online, I thank each and every one of you for sharing your opinions. I know that this has been a long and lengthy process with starting with the non-statutory meeting that was held, and then the statutory meeting that's held, and then this committee of the whole. So this is how the political process is supposed to run, and that we take into consideration all different sides of every argument, and try to make sure that no stone is unturned. So I thank everyone for their comments and questions, both online through the correspondence that we've all received, and as well as in person, because this is what makes the process work. So the motion still remains on the floor, and this is committee of the whole. So I'll read the motion one more time. The committee of the whole recommends that council approve zoning bylaw amendment application number D14-2023-007 to rezone the property from shoreline residential RS zone, shoreline residential special exception 40 RS-40 zone, tourist commercial CT zone, tourist commercial special exception 9 CT9 zone, tourist commercial special exception CT23 zone, open space OS zone, and provincially significant wetland PSW zone to rural industrial special exception 18 MR18 zone, and that the committee of the whole recommends that council grant 3 readings and recommend the bylaw be attached for report number planning and development 2024-037 as exhibit G. So the motion remains on the floor, and Ms. Kelman.
Thank you, Your Worship. And for you to the clerk, I'd like to request a recorded vote, please.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Counselor Kelman,
No.
Counselor Lackey,
Yay.
Counselor Gurrell, Counselor Jameson,
Yay.
Counselor Maybe,
No.
Deputy Mayor Fode,
No.
and Mayor Smith-Gacky.
Yay.
4-3, the motion is carried.
So the next item on this agenda, sorry, sheet, is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Any other business? Sorry, go ahead.
Is the operations director going to be here from next portion of the meeting? Yeah. Can I ask a question then, even though it's not typically permitted for council for other business, but
I'll allow it because we'll shut this meeting down and take a break and then get back to it. And then any other business? Notices of motion? Counselor Jameson, please go ahead.
The notice of motion, Counselor Kelman and I have put a motion forward with respect to Lyndhurst Road, and that goes in the next meeting. We don't have to worry about it here.
Through your worship, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. Any other notices of motion? Seeing none, I'll put forward the motion to adjourn, moved by Counselor Jameson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fode, that the committee of the whole adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Thank you.